All right. Hi, my name is Jessica Sumner,
And I'm Greg Johnston.
and we are doing a company case report on Pfizer. All right. So Pfizer is an American multinational pharmaceutical company headquartered in Manhattan, New York City, originally founded by Charles Pfizer and Charles Earnhardt. They operate in 125 countries and have 35 manufacturing sites worldwide. With more than 112 projects currently in the works, they employ over 79,000 employees worldwide, with Albert Bourla serving as CEO.
So their vision and mission statements. Their mission statement is to become the world's most valued company to patients, customers, colleagues, investors, business partners, and the communities where we work and live. The vision states, innovate to bring therapies to patient and significantly improve their lives. Core values are courage, excellence, equity, and joy.
So some of their most major contributions started off early. They started off with an anti-parasitic drug that was meant to taste like toffee. They moved into citric acid, which fueled the soda industry. They eventually created a fermentation-free way of producing vitamins and became the lead supplier at that time. They produce two notable antibiotics, penicillin and ivermectin. They also came out with Viagra and Lipitor. Now they run two different divisions, the PC1, which is a global contract development and manufacturing organization backed by Pfizer resources and a leading supplier of specialty APIs. And then biopharma, which is vaccines, oncology, internal medicine, inflammation and immunology, hospitals, and rare disease. I listed a couple examples. So they have COVID and Prevnar, which is strep vaccines, Ibrance, which is for breast cancer, Xtandi, which is for pelvic cancer, and Eliquis, which is an anticoagulant, and then Xeljanz, which is for arthritis. And then they do research for hospitals and with rare diseases.
Key performance indicators. Global programs and commercial transactions to increase access to medicines in emerging markets. They use this stat a lot in comparing themselves just on that standard. Top 21 global burdens of disease addressed by products in pipeline. Total injury rate in 2019 was 13% lower than in 2018. Greenhouse gas emissions, you can see the goal there is to decrease those by 20% from the previous year. Water disposed, goal to decrease by 15%, and water withdrawal is to decrease by 5%. Internal and external constraints. For internal, we have data management, research and development, budget, and developing raw materials. And a lot of these came out are highlighted in the years that led up to COVID, in the years during and post-COVID, especially when they come out with more vaccines and more booster shots and different innovations in that field. For external, we have regulation, competition, and lawsuits. Again, regulation, competition, and lawsuits are all highlighted more during the COVID years to kind of counteract that and the different challenges that came with that.
All right, so we highlighted the key business risks that Pfizer faces, operational, financial, strategic, and hazard. And for operational, our top two are supply chain regulatory. For financial, it's lawsuit and cyber. For strategic, it's falling demand and pipeline setbacks. And then hazard, it's health risk, and then biological risk.
So for our heat map, we can see the different risks that they face or that Pfizer faces in relation to likelihood, frequency, and then impact and severity. Number one, we have cyber, which is a higher impact. It will affect Pfizer more if it does happen. And the frequency is average, but as time goes on, cyber is going to be a bigger and bigger threat. Secondly, we have competition. The impact on this is it's average. It's really up to market trends and market fluctuations. The likelihood on this though is very high because it's always going to be there. Johnson & Johnson, Merrick, Eli Lilly, they're all really big competitors that are going to be around for a long time. Thirdly, we have lawsuits. So the lawsuits we put as lower impact and severity. The reason being is that a lot of the research that we found was that they came from more personal sources, there wasn't really big entities that we could find that really caused Pfizer some legal issues. But since it is lower, since it's coming from a more personal level, then it obviously would happen more frequently. Fourthly, we have regulatory environment, which is dead center because I mean that's just a constant, especially with Pfizer being U.S. based. It's always going to be an issue, or not an issue, but something that they need to keep in mind. Lastly, we have health risk, which there's some debate on this, but for the impact and severity, we have it higher, and that's really more from the vaccine and like side effects with it, rare deaths with it, and the frequency we have is a little bit lower, and that's mainly due to innovations in the field of pharmaceuticals and increasing the value and the benefits that those medications bring.
All right, so cyber is also one of Pfizer's biggest risks, just because they have a lot of people they work with. So they store a lot of data, whether it's their own or just people they work with. So they're susceptible to both first and third party liability for cyber crimes. Some of the drivers of this are IT controls, cloud-based systems, and then difficult quantifications for how much one of these breaches would cost. The subdrivers are growth in IT, and then the interconnected systems. The treatment plan for this would be to reduce opportunities for breach and then to ensure potential breaches. So for the critical priorities for cyber would be increasing internal and external controls, maintaining a diligent workforce, and then maintaining appropriate insurance coverages. Competition. It's always important for a company to produce a successful drug in the quickest amount of time with the least amount of side effects before their competitors can, just in order to maintain a competitive advantage. The drivers of this are pricing, innovation, distribution, and intellectual property. The subdrivers are community relations and location, just because it's easier to get things out if you have a large distribution network or you have a presence in multiple different countries. The treatment plan for competition, I chose to reduce areas of competitors' advantages by having multiple different divisions and research and development in all of those divisions, as well as I think it's important to retain a healthy level of competition just in order to ensure that you are creating good drugs with less side effects. So the critical priorities would be maintaining growth in each department and then aligning with ESG principles. Next, I have listed just a few of the major competitors. So Johnson & Johnson is one of their biggest competitors, obviously with the vaccine. They have a large number of employees, large sales revenue, and they have major contributions just like they do. And they're actually splitting into two companies, so they're only going to get bigger. Merck & Co. is one of their biggest competitors, and they are second in line to wearing the crown as biggest in pharmaceuticals. And they have sales revenues that just are continuously growing, and they're growing at a larger rate. And they're also larger in cancer drug production than most of these other companies. AbbVie is a little bit smaller, but they are good in their divisions. And then there's Bristol's and Squibb, obviously, which is continuously growing. Lawsuits is important for a company just because it does have multiple different places in which it could get sued, whether it's employee relations, public health, daily operations, government regulations. Some of the drivers of these is business practices, management, laws, and then obviously like death with COVID vaccines or like other medicines. Obviously, things can go wrong. The drivers of this are competition, public officials, and then just negligence. The best treatment plan for this is just to ensure or reduce opportunities for things to go wrong. And then the critical priorities would be to enforce ethical guidelines, employ competent management, and then ensure the potential liabilities.
For regulatory environment, we kind of took a holistic approach to this, is looking at the pharmaceutical industry as a whole instead of Pfizer alone. The pharmaceutical industry is heavily regulated by governments all around the world in an effort to protect the world from harmful drugs. These regulations often prolong the process for drug companies substantially in terms of their research and development, how soon they get a drug out. It also depends on the demand, because With the vaccine, for instance, it took, months to a year as opposed to like 10 years typically for other drugs. Um, some of the drivers for the regulatory environment, public health concerns and safety. Um, that's always the biggest one is the health of people. That's always the biggest worry for the pharmaceutical industry. Sub-drivers are quality and control. Um, the pharmaceutical industry is heavily regulated, mainly because of the impact they have on everybody in the country. So the governments do have a responsibility to look out for their people. The treatment plan, we put reduce potential hazards and avoid obvious breaks in regulation. Critical priorities: enforce ethical guidelines, and focus on quality versus quantity. I apologize for this. Lastly, we have health. Health is a highlighted risk in recent past for Pfizer, specifically in terms of the COVID vaccine. Drivers for this: transmission rates after taking the vaccine. That was a big concern with initially, the public was told that if you get the vaccine, you won't transmit it. That turned out to be false. And that's just a great example of how when you think you have everything right, there's still room for error. Sub-drivers are side effects of the vaccine: flu-like symptoms, chills, fever, nausea, sleeping problems. These are all side effects of the vaccine that are sub-drivers of this health risk. Treatment plan is to ensure and obviously try to reduce the instances where those things can take place and those bad scenarios can turn out true. Also is ensure against this, have really good D&O insurance and E&O insurance. Critical priorities: place strong emphasis on improving the vaccine. That really is the main driver behind this health risk, is the innovation behind it, the research and development behind it, the funds to fund the R&D. Those are all great ways to make an impact on this risk. COVID-19. So Pfizer's revenues nearly doubled from 2021 to 2022 to nearly 81.3 billion. mRNA vaccines hold nearly 70% of the US and European market. It's expected to bring in 50 billion from 2 COVID medicines in 2022. Pfizer's donations to political candidates in the 2020 cycle were larger than those of any other drug company. So they were seeking influence for the betterment of the company. Unlike Moderna, Sanofi, Novavax, and Johnston, which get billions of dollars in US support, Pfizer did not seek government money to develop its vaccine, saying it would work independently. So Pfizer really, they made out well from COVID, and that's inherently where a lot of the risk comes from. In terms of when there's an opportunity like that, or in any opportunity, if you have opportunity, it inherently creates risk. You inherently have something to lose if you have opportunity. And these are our citations.